It looks like the YouTube live is working now.
Okay.
Can you see it?
I'm getting onto YouTube right now.
There's a lot of lag between WebEx and YouTube. Normally, you wouldn't watch both at the same time. So you three, don't forget to time yourselves. Today we've got Andrew, Lauren, and Mason in that order. So pass it over to you, Andrew.
All right.
Can you just, before you start, let's check and see if this YouTube live thing is working. If I can hear your audio and everything.
Hello, hello. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yes.
Sweet. Am I good to go?
Yep. Go ahead.
All right. So here you can see we got on the map we got a bit of a ridge here forming in the west of the country, California. We got also a little bit of a trough there that makes its way through the week strengthens a little bit. We can also see that the ridge kind of doesn't really move much, but we can see, and this is within the last 3 days, we have a trough that forms right there with the low pressure system. And you can see that on the screen here, that it's very, very strong low pressure, very low. You can see that move, that start to develop. Here we have the reports from yesterday, and you can see that we had a little bit of a system that came through. It was a mid-latitude cyclone with a squall line, and that squall line produced a lot of wind reports. Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, Missouri. And you could see at the very I was keeping track of this all day long yesterday, and it produced hail, very large hail, almost baseball size in Oklahoma and Kansas, even parts of Texas, and then it transitioned to more of a wind threat when the squall line moved southeast through Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas. And you can see Tuesday temperatures. You can see that the high pressure system with the ridge allows there to be very warm and hot over the California Valley, and also Texas is very hot too. You can see that temperatures into the 100s, very interesting for this part of the year. You can see that everywhere else it's generally, you can see Michigan, it's very warm there too. That's involved with the warm front with the mid-latitude cyclone that I'll show later. We tap into a little bit of the warm air there, and that allows us to experience some 70-degree temperatures across a lot of parts of the state. You can see the lows generally. And you can see here we got the trough. Very, very well formed. You can see the ridge is also well defined here with the jet streaks. And here's the vorticity, very strong vorticity as expected from this low. And here's the water vapor or the dew point depression. You can see that the moisture is definitely there, and you can see that you will be able to see later that the definite the upper Midwest definitely taps into that moisture availability. Here I go to the skew-tees. You can see very moist, very 100% humidity over Gaylord that goes all the way up very high. You can see that with most of these locations. Detroit also shows that, and this basically shows that there's moisture availability, and that's why we're getting into this rain and involved with this mid-latitude cyclone that we see that I will show in the some of the next maps. You can see that with almost every map that very close together. And here, this is where you see the mid-latitude cyclone. You can see the warm front that was involved with our warm temperatures yesterday. You can see the low right here, very strong low. You could also see a dry line right here in Texas, and with a little bit of a warm front there. That was most likely what was involved with the very warm temperatures in east and central Texas in the 100s over there. Then as we go on, you can see the squall line that moves, and you can see that the stationary front actually develops from this, indicating that it is starting to undergo cyclogenesis. So you can that moves across the country, and zooming into the Midwest, you can see that below there, stationary, basically summing it up. And let me go back there and show the movement of the squall line that was involved with the damaging wind and damaging wind reports. You can see that move southeast and move off the coast into the Gulf. This can load. It's getting there. So you can see that the squall line involved with this southern portion of the system moves generally in the southeast direction across Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana. Most of the threats occurred late night generally in the middle of the night between Tuesday and Wednesday in like the Arkansas, northeast Texas area. You can see that with the clouds, this starts to develop, become very well defined over the course of the early morning hours of Wednesday today into the early afternoon. You can see that develops, and it shows that characteristics of a mid-latitude cyclone. Very well defined there as it undergoes cyclogenesis. So that's all I have for the past, and I'll send it to Lauren for the present.
Are you able to see my screen? Okay, so I'm going to start off with the radar here. As you can see, there is the rain associated with that low pressure system that is down here in Illinois. And as you go through, you can see the rain moving in a counterclockwise rotation around that low. Not much to not much anything heavy, very light rain, nothing severe. There's a little bit of heavier rain here and down here where the low is located. And you just see it move through the state. And then on the satellite here, you can see that there's the clouds are very thick around this low here. You can also see, again, the counterclockwise rotation around the low. In addition, you can see some snow or fog, or some fog over snow up here in Canada. And if we go over to the current obs at CMU, it's 56, about 57 degrees. Dew point is very close to the temperature, 56.3 to 56.8, 98% humidity, less than an inch accumulation of rain, but close to it at 0.89 of an inch. Pressure is 29.44 inches. Wind is moving from the southeast at about 9.2 miles an hour. And if you come down here to the line graphs, you can see the temperatures have been pretty low and steady over the night hours, and then there's a spike around 9 a.m. as the ground started to heat up a little bit, and as the stationary front moved in a bit more. You can also see that the dew point and the temperature are very close to each other, which was associated with all the rain that we got overnight. Winds are pretty consistent around, 8, 7 miles an hour, some stronger gusts here and there. The direction has been almost consistently going east to east-southeast, or from the east. And you can also see the increase in the precip accumulation from all the rain we've been getting. And there is a very steep drop in the pressure as that low moved in from last night to this morning. Now if we go back here to you can see the 250 millibar isotax. You can see this very strong meridional flow almost all across the country. This really deep low here that's associated with the rain we were getting, and a very strong ridge over here. Not any noticeable jet streaks anywhere, but you can also see that the warm, moist air is being pulled up from the south by this really deep jet here. And if you move on to vorticity, strong vorticity around where this low is, especially like right there, right where the low is located. Not much of note really anywhere else. There's a little bit up here in Canada, but that's about it. If we move on to the 850 millibar dew point depression, you can see how deep the low is here. You can also see all of the available moisture in the dew point in our area where all the rain is falling. You can also see the warm air advection, which is bringing up the warm, moist air from the south, which is leading to all this rain that we've been getting. You can also see the warm air advection on the thickness map here. Here we have the surface dew point and the surface temperature here. If you can see that the dew point in Michigan especially and the temperature are very close. Not as close as they were when I looked earlier because it's stopped raining since then, but you can also see very warm temperatures down here in Texas, Arizona area associated with these warnings we have. So we have an excessive heat warning down here in the Arizona, California area where those really high temperatures were, and a red flag warning here in Nebraska, which is very dry air, warm temperatures, high winds, greater risk of fire. You can also see some high wind advisories around the same area, and then some flash flood warnings over here where the stationary front is, as well as some flood warnings along the Mississippi River. And that is all I have, so I will pass it on to Mason for the future.
All right, can you guys hear me? That is not the right one. Sorry. All right. I'm sorry, I'm having some issues here. Try this one more time. There we go. That's a little better. Okay, so starting off at our WPC predictions. We have our low pressure system that is currently affecting the area, continuing to hang around into tonight and tomorrow morning. So we can expect some more rain in our area, as well as for most of the Midwest and East Coast. You can see the squall line that Andrew was talking about earlier continue to move eastward across the deep south into Georgia, Florida, and eventually into the Atlantic. As well, you can see on the west coast, the next set of storms firing up over there with chances of thunderstorms in western Idaho and eastern Oregon. Continuing on throughout the week, you can see that the low pressure system affecting us begins to occlude as that cold front catches up to the warm front. And it still is producing a lot of rain, moving slowly, as it's not really under the influence of the jet stream, which we will see in a little bit when we look at our 250 millibar heights. So this storm system slowly moves across the east of the country, which is why we see a lot of those flood watches in the East Coast, as it's just a really slow moving storm. And it's going to be raining heavily and for a long period of time in that area. And we see kind of our large scale ridging pattern and high pressure with clear weather for most of the plains, and those storms continuing to move east from Oregon and Idaho. And that continues onward throughout the rest of the week. Moving on to our liquid precipitation forecasts. Again, for our day one, 24 hours, see a lot of rain in the northern lower and eastern upper peninsula of Michigan, with some slightly lighter rain the further south you go in Michigan. And as well, you see some heavier rain, I should say, along that squall line that we see associated with that cold front. Moving on to our day two, we see those rainfall totals start to add up in the East Coast, where those flood warnings are, or watches are. And it starts to quiet down in our area with only some light rain in the eastern part of the state. And we also see towards the west coast the rainfall from their storms over there. Onto our day 3, we again see the rain continue to move eastward off of the west coast, and we see our low pressure system that was affecting us right now continue to move out and into the Atlantic as that progresses. Days 4 and 5, we see a lot of rain stretched out across a lot of the country, but it's mostly light rain. The Mount Pleasant area is not expected to see any rain for those 2 days. And for 6, 7, we continue to see that rain spread with some very light rain in our area and some heavier rain down south. For your totals, again, we see heavy rain in the east associated with that squall line and slow moving low pressure. We see some heavy rain in the northern lower peninsula, again, as that low pressure system just isn't really moving a lot, so it's dumping a lot of rain for us. And we see some higher rainfall totals over in the west as their storm system brings rain to them. And I'd also like to point out how dry it is in the south right now. As you know, Lauren talked about those excessive heat warnings and that really dry air in this area coming from the Sonoran Desert source region here. And you can also see kind of where you would expect the dry line to be over in Texas, where you really see the difference in the rainfall totals as there's just not as much moisture available to the west there, which is always interesting to see. Moving on to our severe outlooks. Marginal risk, don't do that to me. Marginal risk in the deep south, in the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida, associated again with that squall line. Not really expecting any tornado weather from it. Mostly going to be winds are going to be the biggest damager, not really anything for hail there. And there's also a marginal risk over in the Cascade Mountain region as their storm brings a chance for severe weather and some damaging winds and hail. On to day 2, similar story. We just see everything shifting eastward as it moves down its track. So the marginal risk areas moving to the Carolinas and Virginia and southern Florida, as well as most of southern Idaho and into Montana. There. Day 3, things kind of quiet down. Just some general thunderstorms in a few select areas over the East Coast where that slow-moving storm is going to be, and into Wyoming where that storm is continuing its track. And day 4, 5, 6, predictability is all too low for any of that. All right, onto our HRRR. We see our low pressure system, very slow moving, not doing a lot, but it is bringing a lot of rain to the area, especially up where I live. It's been raining all day. You also see some of the rain off to the east as this storm very, very, very slowly moves. I'd also like to point out the pressure gradient. It's been very windy. You can see right here at the beginning of our HRRR loop, very windy in the northern lower peninsula. And it starts to die down a little bit as that low pressure moves around a little bit. On to our 250 millibar heights. We see our jet stream here, not an incredibly strong jet stream, and it's not really having a lot of influence on our low pressure system because all these winds are very weak. So that's one of the reasons why this rain is lasting so long and not really moving much. But as we continue further into the week and we see our jet stream start to strengthen again in this very zonal or meridional pattern rather, that our low pressure system is going to be influenced more by that and start to move a little bit more quickly, which is good news for the East Coast, all those people that hate rain over there. And so we just see this continuing on into the end of the week and the beginning of next. And it's replaced by very zonal flow, not very strong gradient, which is why we don't see very strong winds aloft. And it's also kind of why we see a lot of this more widespread, not really confined rain later into next week. At our 500 millibar heights, we see a lot of this vorticity associated with our low pressure system. And we see that our low pressure system isn't yet vertically stacked. It's still ahead. It's around near southern Michigan. So we still see divergence aloft contributing to the strengthening of that low. Moving on, we see again that this trough moves very, very slowly, not really speeding up much until later in the week. It continues to strengthen as time passes until eventually we see it start to pick up speed as the jet stream has more influence over it. And looking over at our West Coast showers back here, we see the beginnings of our low start to form out here as the next trough moves in to the country, and you can definitely tell that it's not as strong of a trough as the one we're currently in right now, which is part of the reason why those storms aren't really as strong as the large squalls that we see on the East Coast. But yeah, then we see everything get replaced by this very zonal pattern. Not a lot of activity going on here. I'd also like to point out that as the ridging pattern comes in, the temperature will be increasing in our area and for much of the country. We're not really under the effect of a lot of that cold northern air. Onto precipitable water. Pretty average story here. In front of the low, we're seeing a lot of moisture being pulled up north from the Gulf of Mexico and a lot of warm air advection with that. And behind the low, we're seeing a little bit of cold air advection and drier air as it moves on. As we continue out and the zonal pattern really sets in over the nation, we see that there's not a lot of moist Gulf air moving northward. And it's generally staying consistent. The dry regions are going to be staying dry. The moist regions are going to be staying moist throughout the week. Onto our meteograms. Temperature for Mount Pleasant. Today, highs will be in the low 60s, where we'll see a slight cool down tomorrow as the cold front passes down into the 50s. And then after that, warming up as that ridging pattern takes hold. We'll see very nice weather in the 60s and actually approaching 70 as we get into Friday and Saturday. Precipitation. Most of the precipitation we are going to see today and tomorrow, with a slight chance of rain on Friday. So you can see that here. We're looking at less than an inch of rain, around half an inch. So it won't be an incredible amount or a dangerous amount of rain. Snowfall, we're not expecting any snow. I would be extremely surprised to see snowfall later into next week. Wind speeds, it's been fairly gusty, as we saw that pressure gradient was fairly strong earlier today. But we'll see that begin to cool down as that low pressure system leaves us and we see some very zonal flow and ridging pattern. So winds will calm down around 5 to 10 miles per hour for the next few days, with some gusts, of course, being a little higher than that. Wind direction. Winds will currently be shifting following the low pressure system. They'll be moving to a northerly flow as it moves off to the east. And eventually, stabilizing out to a southerly flow as we move on into the weekend there. And on to our forecast for the next 3 days. Tomorrow, expect a low of 42 degrees and a high of 52. It'll be overcast with rain showers. About 1/10 of an inch of rain is expected, with some light winds out of the north at 7 miles per hour. And it'll be a cooler day as, again, that cold front passes us by. Friday, it'll start to warm up, low of 43, high of 63. It'll be partly sunny with a slight chance of showers, only about 20%, so we're not really expecting much accumulation from it. Winds will be north-northeast, again, at about 7 miles per hour, and that's when we'll start to see that warming. Saturday, we see a low of 48, a high of 68. It'll be partly sunny, no precipitation expected, light winds out of the south, 5 miles per hour. It'll be a really nice day, really good day to just get outside and enjoy the weather, but 6 feet apart. Weather impact, not expecting any impacts here. Some rain Thursday, followed by warmer temps, clear skies. Again, it's just light rain, not expecting a lot of flooding or anything out of it. And near certain that it's going to happen. It's pretty well defined on the maps and from everything that we've seen. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Hey, nice work, everybody. What questions do we have for the group? Anyone? Lots of weather going on. Remember, you have to ask 2 questions to get the full points over the whole semester. So, Mason, why do you think the threat of severe weather went from a large moderate risk to just a marginal risk as this system moved eastward?
Are you talking about the one that's over the west coast right now, or the one that's
The one that's making its way over us right now.
I'm sorry, can you say the question one more time?
We had severe weather with this system and the cold front with it yesterday, but today and in the future we don't really expect any. Do you know why that is? Why we didn't see the severe weather really continue across the southern Gulf states like we have with some of the earlier systems?
Would it be the shear really weakening as the jet stream weakens aloft?
Yeah, that's one reason. Can you go back? Maybe take a look at Lauren's surface maps. Mason? Yeah.
What one?
Surface maps in the lower left there. Yeah. So as that cold front is making its way through the southern plains there, it still has quite a bit of cold air behind it. But now as it makes its way more into the Gulf Coast states, notice it kind of passes through almost like east to west rather than north south. So there's just less cold air there, and also maybe less vorticity advection. Also, at least at this time, notice your surface dew points there on the mid 50s as opposed to the upper 60s to low 70s. So it is just a definitely different environment, both in terms of winds, like you talked about, and in terms of temperature and moisture. They didn't see we got up to something like low 80s there in Oklahoma. And now today it doesn't look like it's going to get near that warm there or tomorrow. So just the difference in the strength of that cold front and what kind of environment that it was entering. This severe weather was really tied to the cold front in this example, and that's You see a big long squall line like that, you know that you have strong frontal forcing for lift there. Anybody else? Other questions? People watching on YouTube, if you could comment either on YouTube or on Facebook, the scams page, or just email me, whatever. Let me know how your experience was. This is something that we can make use of in the future. Share our discussions and stuff with the broader audience or anything else we're doing in the program. Okay, last chance for any questions for the group. I talked to the last. I'm going to stop the stream now. But don't leave yet.